All right. Hello and welcome to the New Wave South Asian edition. With me today, I have Avni Goyal from Bombay, India, Rahil Koshti from Ahmedabad, Bombay, India, and I have Reliza Shrestha from Nepal. Reliza is a production designer, Avni is a production designer, and Rahil is a graphic designer working in films. So let's start this session. Who wants to go first with the personal introduction? Avni, would you like to? What?
Yeah, I
All
can
right.
start. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. There you go. Okay. Um, yes, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see I started screen sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. I'm Avni, and I'm a production designer and also a concept artist. And I'm from Indore, which is in central part of India. And I studied from London and then moved to Mumbai to work. And now I'm currently working as an independent production designer with a story studio, which is a firm that I founded. I learned a lot from my time in London. I studied from Wimbledon College of Art. So we learned a lot about collaboration and building sets, which was my favorite thing. And yeah, uh, after I came back from London, the film that I worked on as a production designer was Kamakar, which did really well. We were all very young when we made it, so it was very unexpected. But yeah, it was very rewarding as well. We made it with a lot of heart and love. So yeah, it was nice to see to it. Well, then I spent 4 years assisting in Mumbai on various scales of projects. So some of them were huge set builds, and some of them were location shoots. So I learned a lot about different departments in art department. And now I'm currently focusing on my independent practice as Story Studio. Um, and beyond work, I like to paint, I like to travel, I like collecting stones, and I'm a huge theater nerd. Thank you. That's me.
Wonderful work. Very nice. I really like your work in Kamalgarh. I've not yet seen it, but the visuals are stunning. Very nice.
Thank you.
And so, Rahil or Eliza, who wants to go next? With Rahil, maybe you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I don't have a presentation to be putting on the screen right now, but I
No
do have
problem.
some work that I can like we can bring that into discussion later. However, my name is Rahil Koshti. I was born and brought up in Ahmedabad. It's a city in Gujarat in India, and I have been traveling to Bombay to work in the field of production design over the past 2 years. And yeah, so all throughout my life, I've had keen interest in design. I have been formally educated as a graphic designer, and my current interests, I would say, lie majorly in type design, and I like to explore technology and see how I can kind of use the two in the kind of work that I produce, regardless of what field I am lending myself to. So yeah, that's it.
Wonderful. You're actually very good with type. So, yeah. And Reliza, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Reliza. I'm currently working as a production designer and sometimes as a production designer plus art director because here in Nepal, we just have three members in the art team. It's just like one art director or I mean, there's not even a concept of production designer over here. So there's one art director and one prop master and one runner, like who just goes and buys stuff and pick it up all the accounts and stuff like that. So I am working as a production designer slash art director, but I started my career in this media field as a model. When I started modeling, I mean, when it was photo shoots and stuff, like I used to see people arranging the backdrop and everything, you know. And even when I did music videos and films, when I was in front of the camera, I was more in love with. I started falling more in love with the background setup. And but then in Nepal, what used to happen was like, people would just hammer and then clip things and things like that. And I really wanted to study that portion. And fortunately, my sister, she was studying architecture, and then during the lockdown time, I learned a lot from her, and I did my self study. Actually, I did not do any film course or anything, so I'm currently doing my MBA, to be very honest. But then, yeah, I studied from my sister. I took some Australian film, a course, 3-week course from Australian Film Academy and stuff like that. It's all learning by doing. So I basically do production designing for TVCs, music video, short films, and I've done 2 feature films. Currently, I'm working on my 3rd feature film. I'm very sleep deprived because I just finished the first half and came back to my hometown. So yeah, looking forward to know more from you guys, learn more from you guys.
Very nice. So now that you're doing MBA, do you want to now shift your line of interest, your career of interest, and become like a corporate person, or MBA? So how are you going to merge your MBA with cinema in the sense? It's very interesting actually, because usually people do MBA and then join cinema. It's never like the other way around where you do cinema and join MBA. So it's really interesting. So why are you like, I'm just really curious. It has just that.
I think MBA, it's mostly for my parents.
Okay.
But I think it's also interdisciplinary because you get to learn a lot about learn like sociology and his culture, civilization, and stuff like that. So I think it kind of gives you some sort of, hint for production designing when I'm trying to learn about particular culture, when I'm trying to decorate their houses or build their like sets for that culture, from that ethnicity, or try to learn the mood of the character. The psychology department helps me. Other than that, finance and all, maybe while making estimates, I can
For
use
your
that.
budget.
Yeah.
For keeping a tab, for making your budgets, for keeping tab on the budgets, you can use your accounting skill. I think
And
that's
find
really
the
perfect.
production manager.
That's really perfect. I really like that idea. So, I usually start with this question about like, what do we do? Because this is something which is such a, and I always am interested in knowing a production designer define what they do in the sense, because, it's not something which is very defined. Like, it's not a department that many people really know about, or that many people even understand what all gets into it and how important it is. So, what do we do? Who wants to take that? If someone has to ask you, how are you going to explain what you do, apart from being like a glorified runner? Apart from that, like, what would you say? What do you do?
I'm not sure if I'm right, but can I go first?
Yes. And there is no right or wrong in the sense, what do you think you do? It's your personal opinion. So
Last time, a Tibetan director asked me, what does a production designer do? And then I just told him, sir, you visualize the world and a production designer creates that world. That's what I said. So I might be wrong, but I think it incorporates a lot of, obviously set designs and then color palettes and a lot of separations, details. And I think it also has to do with lighting and camera angles. And sometimes I also interfere with lens choice and stuff like that. If the
how
DP is
lucky are you
if the
to
DP
get a
is
say in choosing lenses? I want to be there. I want to be doing that. Giving choices. Wow, that's amazing. But that's really cool. Yeah. Go on.
you really need to cry like, oh no, please let me do. You really need to cry like a baby, and then sometimes they let you.
Well, I'm going to try this the next time. But anyways, so yes, and continue. We were talking about like sometimes you choose lenses and then like what else?
Yeah, sometimes I get to choose my gaffer, which is like really huge because a DP always chooses the gaffer, right? But sometimes when the DP is like, let's not say very senior, let's say not very senior, So they asked me, like, whatever gaffer or whoever you want to select, you can select. And whoever gaffer understands my vision of set aesthetics, I select that gaffer, and that's like a privilege. But then, yeah, in my country, a production designer is always considered as art team, art, just put up the photo frames and then plans, keep the plans here, there. So it's really hard. I think it's gonna take 5 more years for people to get that basic idea of production designing. That's what I think.
Yes, yes, yes. I worked in Nepal. I can vouch for that. There is no art
Yeah,
department. It's zero.
yeah.
There's nothing
It's
in
just,
its art
yeah,
department. Yeah.
yeah.
But there is the people are willing to learn, in the sense that is what also triggered these sessions. The fact that, there are people who have an innate talent, who can do things, but they just don't know what production design is. They just don't know,
Mm.
because there is, I mean, I don't think in Nepal it is spoken about in general. There is no art department, so nobody knows that what can you do in that art department. Because I did discover some really good art people. One being your the constructor, Jimmy.
Jimmy,
Yeah, he was
yeah,
fabulous. He was the same quality as a Indian art director. It was, so you have people, you just don't,
yeah,
they don't know what they can do or what they should do, because there is no definition, like it doesn't exist, basically. So,
yeah.
and you, Avni, what do you think? What do you do?
Whenever somebody asks me, I usually describe that when you watch a film and everything that's not the character, that's what a production designer does. And then I explain to them, like if we're sitting in a room, then I'll be like, right, if I was designing this room, then I would choose the bed, the walls, like even outside, like where this place is located. So it's like a huge creating of the world from outside to inside to the details. So yeah.
And how did you decide to get into production design? Like, in the sense, was it something, have you always been interested in cinema? And while watching cinema, were you always interested in the art department? Which, once you start working in art department, you kind of start observing it. Like, it's everything you see is
Yeah.
art department in your head. Even if you go to someone's house, the first thing you notice are what are the practicals, what are they, you notice all these things. It just becomes a part of your, your observational skill. So when you were growing up, was art department something which kind of like production design for theater or film or something? What triggered this entire process of going to London, learning the skills, and coming back and becoming a production designer? So what was your, how did it happen?
Um, I actually had no idea art department existed and production design
Mm.
existed, which is crazy because we watch films all the time and
Yeah,
not notice it, which is also that maybe the production designer is doing a great job if you don't notice it
exactly.
and believe it. But I was a fine artist as I was finishing high school, and I was applying for painting courses in London. And I got into this really nice foundation diploma course where you could try all different kinds of art and design fields and see where you fit. Because I kind of always felt like I hadn't found my place yet. And through doing that, they had like a specialization in film and theater. And that was, I think, the first time where everything just clicked, like my love for films and theater and storytelling, but also my love for researching architecture and history and psychology of spaces. And it just felt like it was a tailor-made job for me.
Mm.
And then I decided to pursue it further. And I think even after the diploma, when I was studying my bachelor's, I think even up until second year, I didn't understand the entirety of production design because it's so huge. So even in my first year, we were working on skills like technical drawing, miniature model making, and stop motion animation. But it's when we started working on actual sets with other filmmaking students that, you understand the many aspects of a production designer's say that goes into it. And then I started noticing it in films, and it became this second layer of storytelling that I could see when I would watch films.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And you, Rahil, I mean, I know your journey, but why don't you tell your journey? Like, how did you stumble into production design, and what do you do in production design?
As a graphic designer, I am a part of the art department, and I do work with the team, with set decorators, and with production designers to kind of bring to life the ideas that have been, the moods and the ideas that have been discussed, and the narrative or the story in the end is going to come across better or in a much more profound manner if these nuances are kind of looked after. If each and everything in the frame that you see, first of all, I didn't know this earlier before getting into this, that every little thing that you see in frame has been intentionally placed by someone. It's not that we landed up into a house. It's not that we borrowed someone's bedroom. It's not even if we are, then we are bringing our own beds, our own mattresses, our own frame. So I mean, it's a lot of eye to detail. It's a lot of effort, and I think the intention with which each decision is made really drives and helps bring the cohesion in the narrative. And like we're very much responsible for ensuring believability of the story. And it kind of, I've noticed in situations where even the actors and I mean other members of the team are able to like bring out better performances and kind of get into the role better, understand the narrative better if the job of a production designer has been done well. So yeah, I think it's a very unexplored space. It's also pretty new for me, but it is quite it's quite a fun journey to be a part of. So yeah, as a graphic designer though, I am responsible very specifically for making sure that all the print graphics and all the visual graphics on set, in the frame, are in place and are designed and in line with what the production designer needs it to be. So yeah, that's mainly my role.
Yeah, but very well defined. That entire production design thing is very, very true. Like, you know, we bring our own mattresses, our beds.
Yeah.
Do all of that also. So, but yeah, coming to the fact that this is not a very traditional or a conventional choice, you know, to become a production designer or to work in cinema for men and for women, you know, especially in South Asia. It's not a very stable job. It's not something which parents are very happy. I mean, I'm not generalizing it, but in general, it's not a job where people understand firstly what you do, and then when you take it up, it's always kind of like, oh, but you know, it's cinema, it's too glamorous, you know, but there is this thing, that thing. So when you decided to get into it, especially as women, when you decided to get into cinema, what was in general the reaction to this choice of yours by your family, your partners, or was there some kind of like an opposition? You know, what was it in the sense? How was it, Reliza, for you, being in Nepal? In Nepal, I like there is no art department, but even cinema, what I got the sense of when I was working there is not a profession which is really very held high. You know, it is just something that people are like. There's always a second career for everybody working in cinema in Nepal, because this is not like their principal career. So how was it when you decided, since you were a model, and then how was it like when you decided to be a model? And then how was it like what was your journey in terms of, you know, from your family and your partners? Like, what was it in the sense of that?
So initially, when I started modeling, I had just joined my bachelor's, and I think my parents were okay with that because they just thought I was just doing it as a part of hobby. You know, I would just get some pocket money out of it, and I was still going to college and still asking them for pocket money. But later on, I switched to production designing, and my parents were okay with that. But then they still had that fear, you know, because it is kind of secondary. The art, the film, cinema industry is considered kind of secondary here in Nepal. That's why I told you my parents want me to complete my MBA, because they still have that insecurity in their heads, like if the cinema industry might not do good, there might be recession again, and then what if she holds an MBA degree, she can still, you know, apply to some offices, banks, whatever, NGOs, INGOs. So that's there. But from the relatives point of view, I think they were a little naggy about it because they would initially provoke my parents and tell them like, it's a very shady industry, and your daughter is like staying up late hours, and then she's coming home at 3 a.m. in the morning or 5 a.m. in the morning. Where does she go? There's like a lot of men, like 90% men in the set, only like makeup and hair. Like they're female. All of them are like all male. And then sometimes my parents would like get a little shaky, like when my relatives used to say that in our family gatherings and festivals and all that. So later I started avoiding a lot of family gatherings because they would always bring out this topic, like your daughter is working late hours with so many men. And I would be so scared. And one day I had gone to my dad's corporate event, and there I faced some sort of harassment. And then that was the point where I could say that, see, this doesn't happen only in the cinema industry. So I faced that harassment in the corporate industry. So it depends on an individual how he or she takes, like, it depends on the individual. It doesn't depend, like, this happens in any industry. The hardship is there in any industry, struggle is there everywhere. So I think it's on to you how you shape your career, make your way, and stuff like that. So these days, I don't face that much of a problem, but I just need to complete my thesis. That's it. But having said that, it's really hard here in Nepal because the payment is very low, very, very less, and even if
do you get paid even if the payment is low? Do you get paid on every project? Because that is what I got the sense, that you don't really get paid on every project, that it's a problem to get your salaries and your payments out. And it's a lot of that as well, which is a little bit there in Bombay as well. Was there before, but I don't know, maybe now it's a little better. But yeah, this not paying is a thing.
Yeah, the thing is like they actually they initially have very little payment, and then there are some production houses who are like very good and they pay you okay and they pay you on time. So I'm okay with that. But most of them are like they pay you 1, 2, 3 months later, and then you're already in a loan from like borrowing money from your parents, and then when the money comes, it all goes away to your parents. So yeah, the payment system is really poor here in Nepal. It's really hard.
And do you still stay with your parents, or you are living independently? And how is it?
I still stay with my parents.
And they're okay with like your long hours if you come back late for your night shoots? Now they must be okay with it because you've been working in the industry for a while. It's been how many years?
4.5 years.
Yeah, so now they're used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and with you, Avni, did you face ever this problem that why cinema, why production design, why not say architecture, why not say like interior design, residential projects, why cinema? Did you ever face this from your family or partners, or it was just smooth flowing for you? How was your experience?
My sister's an architect, like Reliza, so that was like I didn't want to pursue that. But I think my parents were relieved when I called them up and said I want to pursue set design, because before that I was going to be a painter. So they were happy to be supportive that yeah, you do that. But I think they were like also worried how I would, support myself. But then like when I called them up and said I found this job, you know how people call up their parents and say, oh, I found someone to marry. So I called up my parents and were like, I found my soul job. So I think they were just really happy for me. They didn't understand it for the longest time, even while I was studying. I think they didn't understand exactly what my job was, because even though I think it's really hard to gauge that all of this is production design.
Yeah.
So I think they finally understood it when I actually took them around one of my sets in Mumbai and showed them like, this is this department, this is what we do, this is what we do. So now they have a better idea of what it is I do. So they've been really supportive. My mom was obviously worried about me working in Bombay, and like Reliza said, even in Bombay, like the late hours, and even though it's such a safe city, I think that is always a concern that parents have.
Definitely now in the Bombay art department, you definitely have way more women than they were when we started, I mean,
Yeah.
but still, I think the equation is not really as it should be, because
Mm-hmm.
India, if you really see the ratio, still the men are more and the women are less, and when that happens, it's always skewed. And for you, Rahil, how did your parents react when you decided to do a cinema project, or it was something like, okay, like it was fine? Just the switch from like, web designing and doing graphic design job to just going into this industry, which has like you were gone to Kathmandu for like straight away for about 2.5 months, and then you were there. And so how did your family react to it in the sense, what
I
was
know. So, my parents aren't cool with like late nights. They're still not there. They will ever be fine with super late nights. They'll keep calling. They'll keep being.
Did
Be
they do
at
that
my.
in Kathmandu as well?
Not so much in Kathmandu, but they couldn't believe the amount of work that we were doing.
Yeah.
Like they were we were out working at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and they were just like, "What is going on? Why are you working so much? Are you eating? Is everything fine?
Yeah.
What have
You
you signed up for?
Yeah, exactly. What have you signed up? Because being in the design space in general, you do kind of work extra hours, but
Yeah.
this is some different story altogether.
Even
You might be doing 18-hour shifts, and it calls for that. So you have to be willing to put in that effort. If you can't, then I mean, you're not really going to bring the best that you can bring to the table. So I guess that's more on the individual. But just a little anecdote that, of course, the perspective from women's side will be, I mean, you have that kind of experience on you have the experience yourself and you can talk better. But what I've noticed is that the producers, the production house will always ensure that there is security, that there's someone, there are people around, and there's comfort in the way that you're working. Well, it may or may not always be in the best manner, but there is effort, and that is their responsibility. So it's not like you're completely by yourself. It's not that you're completely left in the wild and that you're just asked to be there at 2 or 3 in the night with no home or something like that, right? So there is certain sense of security in knowing that, certain sense of peace in knowing that there is support. But yes, it gets difficult, I'm pretty sure. I personally don't mind working long hours. In fact, I enjoy doing it. I like the sprint and I'm all in for that life. So that's why I got into this field. I think that's what like pulled me towards this field, because every day that I'd be doing my freelance work, I'd sit for 5 hours, 6 hours, maybe 8 hours a day. Then I'm done. I have a little comfort zone in my life. And this kind of really threw me out of my comfort zone. It made me meet a lot of new, interesting people. I got to learn a lot of new things, not just about my field, but also about filmmaking and about theater, about acting, um, about storytelling. And I think it's a very wholesome experience. So I guess that's why I got attracted into it. And yeah, I think it is quite the effort, but it's worth it. It's worth it one completely. I don't mind the late. I don't mind the little bit of trouble that I might have to go through. To
You were quite a trooper though, so that's true. And you did
Yeah.
more than just graphic design. You also kind of assisted in a lot of things here and there later. So yes,
Yes,
yeah.
I
So
like
you're
to get my
quite
hands dirty. And I guess, I mean, the more the team has that kind of an attitude, the project will come out better. It'll become a much more fun experience for everyone to work with. I
yeah.
mean, no one wants to work with a prick, right? So yeah.
No one wants to, but
True.
sometimes you just have to. You know what I mean? You're just there and you have to. No one wants to, yes. And Reliza in Nepal, when you do like late nights and things like that, do you have production support or how does it work there?
Um,
Like when you're setting up, of course, when you're shooting, there's an entire team there. I'm not talking about the
Yeah.
shoot, but when you're setting up, so you're setting up
yeah.
and you're kind of, it's getting late and you're working late. Do you have like the production support or how does
Yes,
you do?
we do like we might not have the main production manager, but he will send some of his people for security and stuff like that. And especially if we are setting up in a forest or
Oh,
places like like that, they will have security guards, one or two. So yeah, that's there. I mean, these things have started now. but previously it was not. I mean, one of the major issues used to be a portable toilet, washroom.
Yeah,
So
that's never there. Even in that's a phantom thing. Like, it doesn't exist. For some reason, production just does not think that that's necessary. So it
yeah,
just
and
doesn't cross their mind.
they just like when they're even when they're calling the production design team, they're gonna be like art boys, like in Nepali, art ko ketaharu, I mean like art boys. And I'm like, dude, I'm also in the team. And then they forget the fact that there's a lady in the team, and then she needs a separate washroom if we're setting up inside a forest or in some secluded area. So they think that
Or
only boys
even
are
when
there.
you're setting up in the city to just have clean toilets, because it's not really your job to come with a harpic and clean it. It should
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
for you, because you're part of the filmmaking crew. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
but that I think is I don't know, maybe a South Asian thing that's everywhere. They
Yeah.
just don't think. The only two times when I didn't have to think about a clean toilet was if when the EP was a woman. That makes so
Yeah.
much of a difference when the executive producer or the head of production,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
she automatically thinks these things, and then
Yeah.
you don't have to struggle with that. Otherwise, you have to tell the producer or the production manager, okay, please make sure I have a lot of girls in my team. Make sure that when we're setting up, there's a toilet, a clean toilet. It just be a basic. So
Yeah.
setting up, there are women, we put a toilet. Even for men, put a toilet. So they're not peeing anywhere and everywhere. It's just the basics, I feel. Correct me if I'm wrong, Avni. That's there in Bombay as well, right? Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
whole concept of toilets. Clean toilets, forget it. Toilets only doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be so adamant, and then like the shoot starts, and you see vanities coming in, and you're
Yes.
like, sorry, where was this when I
Yeah.
needed to be?
And the minute the
Yeah.
shoot day is, you have all the vanities coming in. You have the spot boys coming in asking you for chai every 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
then there were days
Yeah.
when we were setting
Yeah.
up. There's usually
Yeah.
no water. You have to keep crying for these things. These are just basics, and these are like something which makes your experience better, when you don't have to struggle and fight for just basic working condition. I think now
Yeah.
we are making fun of it and making light of it, but I think it's really, really important that it becomes a norm. That's just something,
Yeah, it needs to.
you know.
Yeah, because you can focus on your work better, right? Like
Yeah,
these things
otherwise
when you're not
you know,
distracted.
yeah, otherwise you're just holding your pee till you reach
Yeah.
the hotel room. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable because you're just like
Yeah.
waiting, okay, and but yeah, so like since we don't really have unions, we don't really have. I mean, we have unions, but they're more worker unions. We don't really have unions where all these things can be spoken about or taken care of. So what do you think, Avni? Like, do you think it's time that in India we have a union, a proper union who kind of like takes care of us as technicians and professionals also? Not just like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of your salaries and that also, but also in terms of like the basic working condition, you know?
Mm.
So what do you think about
I
that?
mean, this is a very timely conversation because literally, I think 3 days ago, somebody formed a group,
Hmm.
and there's like a dormant union in Mumbai who you have to register with
Hmm.
to get a card so you can work on set. Otherwise, you won't be allowed to work on set, or the production will be fined if you are found without a
Yes.
union card. And recently, they put out a group that will be more active now, and they put out a sheet with rates for assistant art directors and first assistants, and I was shocked to see
Yeah,
those
the
rates
rates, yeah,
because
the rates are ridiculous.
yeah,
Mhm.
even conveyance and
Mm.
weekly salaries, I was like, I don't know anybody who's getting paid this.
Yeah,
And like so there's definitely a huge gap in even just basic rights that can be just because I think production would follow those rules if there was somebody to uphold them.
yeah,
um like just working hours, Rahil said that it's great, but then like I know I was on a set from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. at one point, and that just made me not fit to work half the time, like not being able to get complete sleep and take care of myself. So I think just those basic needs do need to be upheld. Right now, I think it becomes the responsibility of the production designer and art
yeah,
directors to make sure that their team is okay, which becomes like an additional part of their existing responsibilities. So 100% like a decent union is necessary right now.
Yeah, I feel so too. But do you realize, is there a union or concept of union in Nepal, Reliza?
Basically, there is a union for technicians, like for lightmen and
Yeah.
camera boys, but there's no such union concept of union for our department. It's only for technicians, like light crew and camera crew.
Mm.
That's it.
But are there many women working in the design department, in art department, production design department in Nepal, or you're one of the very few, or how? Or it's mainly, I've also noticed it's kind of like production people taking care of art and getting props from people's houses. You know,
Yeah,
just doing that and then be like, okay, because that is what, when we first started working in Kathmandu on the project which we did this year, in the beginning of this year, this is what like was told to me by the art director, my first art director. So
yeah.
he told me, oh no, we just go to people's houses and we just borrow things and we just put it, and that's like your art
No.
department is done.
Yeah, you're
And
so right. Because in Nepal, I think until this day, and they credit the production manager as production designer.
yeah.
Last time I was working in a firm, like it's not released yet, but I was working in a firm, and then I was having a chat with this production manager, and then he was always complaining about the budget, and I was just chatting with him. See, I need these lanterns, like for this separation. I'm not going to use it in the set, but just for the depth, I need to put it like far away. So I was having that. I was teaching him production design, and later I asked him like, so brother, like, what do you think of our work? What do you think of the art department's work? And then he just said, what did you guys do? You guys just like shifted the tables and chairs. So they don't understand, actually. They just think that it's just about moving the chairs and tables, and they don't think why we put that table in a particular space, and what aesthetics, what color palettes, what details we add. So but then for that movie, the production manager was credited as the production designer. So like
And you were
it's
not.
very sorry.
You
I
were not.
was
You were not credited as
no
a production designer.
no
He
no no
was.
no. I mean, not in the movie title, but in one of the press, they were writing about that film,
Oh.
and then they mentioned him as the production designer and me as the art director, and it was like we are like, they don't even know what production design is. And then yeah, basically they just if you say you need a flower pot, they'll just go to a nearby
Yeah.
house and just bring a flower pot, but they don't know what kind of flower, which color, and
So when you make a team, Realiza, you always have the people you have always worked with, and how do you go on making a team? And what are the people in your team, irrespective of whether in Nepal you have 3 people or 4 people? What do you consider a good team?
I consider a good team of having one prop master very important, and I do the art direction and set decoration on my own. So and another is I want a set in charge, like can do the drilling and then hammering and stuff, wiring and stuff like that for the practicals and stuff like that. Uh, that is one. One is prop master. Another is set in charge, and another I want is a runner and. Sometimes you need something immediately on the set, and you just want that person to go out and get those things. Or sometimes the standby props, they like we run out of it, and then so I think these for me, for my team, when we work in Nepal, I think these 3 people are very important. And regarding fabricators and constructors, I would only have them before the shoot, not on the day of the shoot, like on the pre. And then like Jimmy Dai, I work with him. He's my all-time constructor and fabricator. I work with him, and he does the setup and everything. And then I have my set in charge, so that if anything, if anything breaks apart or something, my set in charge will just fix it then and there. And yeah, painting and stuff, we all do it together. So I think prop master is very important. Otherwise, if you have any food in the set, they're just going to finish it and like
The prop
chips
master,
and
But the prop master actually goes and buys props or just borrows. But what is like? How does the prop thing works in Nepal? Like how do you work with props? In the sense you go buy it and then return them, or after you are finished with work, you keep them in a godown. How does it work?
Uh, in my case, in my team, we try to rent a lot of stuffs like furniture and lamps, a lot of motivated lightings, and a lot of things we hire a lot. We give them fixed deposit and then pay 50% of it and stuff like that. And then a lot of things I take from my house, like dinner plates, and my mom is always like, "Don't you break a single plate." And we take decoration items from our houses, books and stuff. So basically it's like four of us in the team, we get everything that we have in our house that matches the color palette and the mood of the cinema, and then we just pack it in cartoons, like the prop master, like for scene number this one cartoon, for scene number this to this one cartoon. And I asked them to put the sticky notes everywhere, like so this is this for this scene, do not touch, this is food, this is for action, like action scenes like knives and all, if there's like petrol, kerosene and dendrites we're using for burning, so we pack it and we write the caution messages, and knives, all of that. And even if I'm doing a climax fight scene and I have to use knives and stuffs, I make sure that every time there's a cut, I go to the spot, and then I put that sticky note there, do not touch the knife. Otherwise actors are always playing around, the ads are playing around with knives, and then you are to be blamed if the knife, even if it's a fake knife, if it just hurts someone, then it's like you're going to be in trouble.
That's your responsibility, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I really think sticky notes are very important for prop masters.
Yeah, that's true.
Package.
And for you, Avni, what do you think makes a good art department for you? Like when you go on selecting your team for a project, for a long format, what do you look for? And even as an assistant and as a PD, what do you think which has been your most favorite art department till now? And in general, what do you think makes a good art department? Like what, according to you, is important to make a good art department?
So there's varying answers to this, but as a PD, like I had two very interesting comparable experiences where I did Gamaghar when I was, I think in 2018. And then recently this year, we did another film in Darbhanga, which is in post-production. So when I did that, I didn't have an understanding of what kind of art department I could ask for in India, because I knew that I can't ask for something that I worked with in London, but so there, and it was zero budget. So I think I just worked with one painter and one electrician and one carpenter for one of the schedules. And then for the second schedule, I asked for a local art director because I was like, no, we have to get some hands on deck. But so that was a very skeleton crew where, the rest of us were also more hands on, where the director himself and his because we were filming in his hometown and his family were also helping me find things. So that was more makeshift. But then the second time around when we made the film this year, then we had slightly bigger crew where three painters instead of one, maybe one more carpenter. And then we had some assistants who came from Mumbai who wanted to help us. And I really appreciated having a runner from the local town with his bike so we could like go get anything. So I think when it comes to independent films, it's usually skeleton. Like I prefer having a smaller crew because there's not like it's a small film, it's a small set, so it's easier to work with less number of people who know what they're doing. But like one of my favorite teams to work with was when it was a bigger project. I was assisting on this. And it was a web series. So we had 6 sets which were being built at the same time. So it was a good mix of 10 assistants and art director. And we were able to split responsibilities between us But the way my production designer worked, they didn't really have departments that, this is graphic design, set dressing, set decoration, which I actually really enjoyed. I mean, that's something that is there in a lot of teams in Mumbai, and it's there in London. Like, there's no other way to do it. But this was more like how I worked in indie sets, where there's no set departments. So you could decide what you wanted to get involved in, and you could just get involved in that. So even if you were very new to the team, if you were someone who was interested in set construction, you can just get into it. So I really enjoyed that free flowing system. Obviously, there's pros and cons to both, where in this one, it becomes a little less systematic. Usually I became the person who would delegate tasks based on who I thought would fit the responsibility. So that becomes a little vague. But as someone who wanted to learn about everything, so I could be a production designer rather than just good in one department, I found that a very good project to work on that way.
Yeah, it's true. When you're involved in everything, you kind of understand. It kind of becomes your teaching ground in general. And then you can also kind of choose what you're interested in. Like the other day, when I was having a conversation with Rashi and Rohini, they kind of pointed out that, like how in India, everyone in our department wants to become a production designer. In the sense that's the end goal. Like if you're a set decorator, and you enjoy being a set decorator, then that's what you want to do in our department. And it's not necessary that you want to become a production designer. In the sense, if you're a good on-set dresser, and you want to continue being an on-set, because these are all very, particular skill sets. Like an on-set dresser, to be able to handle that kind of pressure which comes on the day of the shoot, which is insanely pressured, like, with art especially, because suddenly you're like, oh, art, come do this, come do that, and you have to really think quickly, you really have to get solutions with your on-set team, and you have to do that. So yeah, I think like it's also really important to kind of get immersed in everything which our department has to offer, and then choose yourself. Like, okay, I'm good at this, and I go with this. I'm good at this, and I go with this. It definitely gives you an overall idea of how department works, for sure. And you, Rahil, in the sense, what do you think makes a good graphic design team? Your printer? A good printer who understands and is open.
That's very, very important. I think, choosing your vendor correctly is necessary for sure, because they're really important for like the execution of the tiny things that the collaterals that you hand them over. If you don't know a lot of the stuff, then you end up doing it manually yourself. So a lot of the times, there's been times when I have been making like packaging samples myself, and there's probably 50 or probably 170 pieces, and it is long, strenuous work. It might take up a whole day, it might take up 2 days, and honestly, there's a lot more to get done instead of just sitting there and cutting, packaging boxes, stuff, right? So vendors, of course, are necessary, but I do agree to what Avni said about how being able to kind of do a lot of things is good for personal growth. But I'd also kind of on the contrary, I'd like to say that I think it makes a better team if everyone knows their own responsibilities and they stick to it. And
that makes a more cohesive team, But then,
so I'm done with my job. I would love to go ahead and go on and maybe have set decoration and maybe be on set and like help the prop master. But I need to do my job first. And I think if those boundaries are defined well, which took me a while to understand, which took me quite some time to understand. I remember while I was working with Parul, she'd constantly tell me that don't get involved in stuff that's not your responsibility. You are not supposed to look after it. You will not do it. And I didn't get why she keep saying that. But over time now I do realize why, because it's a very large scale project, and accountability is something that we really need to kind of look after. So we do what we're supposed to be doing and not take other people's work. And I think that makes a good art department. So everyone's good at what they do it on time. And then of course, beyond that, we can all help each other. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then you have worked in Nepal and you have worked now in Bombay as well. So definitely in Nepal, you were in Bombay. Anyways, there are professional printers in the sense something which is open till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So how would you kind of like explain your experiences? Like if you have to compare your experience, I mean, it's pretty obvious that Bombay is much more structured than Nepal. But how were your experiences working as a graphic designer in both Nepal?
Personally, I liked working in Nepal better as a graphic designer
Ah.
because the shop shuts at 9 o'clock and after that. Uh,
Oh, we
the
had a
vendors.
printer. Don't forget, Rahil. We had a printer and you were still working. Huh?
What happened to the
Yeah.
long hours, Rahil? Sorry.
Yeah, but the thing in Bombay is that these guys are open 24/7. You send them anything at any hour in the day, they'll make it and they'll take half an hour, they'll take 1 hour, but it'll be done and it'll be delivered to you on your set or wherever you want it to be delivered. And everything happens that quick. And that means there's that much more pressure all the
Yeah.
time, constant pressure to get things going. Like work never stops. If I'm supposed to compare the other team members, if there are people who are responsible for set construction who work with the art director. They also have certain hours after which they go home and we all take a break, right? So even though we've all taken a break, I go home with my laptop and I just can't turn that switch off. I mean, it's because I'm not working with my tools are always at my disposal. The vendors are at my disposal, and my brain's always in that zone. So then I end up kind of overworking myself, which may or may not be a good thing. But that's why I said I liked working in Nepal better because
Yeah,
then it
I
gave me
get that.
gave me like a little place to stop at, and gave me like my good 8 hours of sleep every night. So
Yeah, because
that's
in Bombay, everyone knows that, you have like 24 hours printer open. So if there is any change, that change can come to the PD at like, I don't know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, or 12 o'clock in the night. And
Oh,
then
yes.
that goes to the assistant or the graphic designer or to the set. Because even prop shops, if you have a good relationship, you can make them open very early in the morning, if not late in the night,
Mm.
Bombay, all of that. So yes, you are never not working because you never know like when the changes will come, and especially in series, which you worked in Bombay, you were working on a series, right, Rahil? And
yes.
I know graphic design in a series is way different than in a film because specifically in say Amazon, Netflix, you have to make everything has to be original graphics. You have to create the graphics for everything from your logos to branding to packaging. Everything has to be created. So the madness of working in a series and the chaos of working in a film. Explain, like, how would you compare since you have done both?
Yeah, so the biggest difference I noticed was that the film, first of all, being larger, I mean, more cohesive. This thing, I just felt like I could stay in track with the story much better because it's one continuous story, which allowed me to kind of work in a much more systematic way. Whereas when it came to working on a web series, we were doing multiple episodes, but of course go to a location and we're going to shoot scenes from this episode, we're going to shoot scenes from the later episodes, or it's going to be a mixed bag, right? And for me to be able to adapt to that switch and to understand the context that I have to establish, I mean, us as a team altogether, not just me as a graphic designer, right? Because you're constantly switching contexts and time frames and you're jumping from one part of the story to another. So I think that's a bit tricky. But even if you get the hang of it, there's a lot of work to do. In the
Insane
sense,
amount.
yeah. So at any given point, at least on the web series, we were working on 2 forward sets consecutively. So if there's a shoot going on here today, there's another forward that's working in some other spot, and then there's another forward after the forward. So that's a lot of that's 3 teams working together at any given point in time. At least with the film project that I worked on, I didn't experience that kind of a rush, and it was slightly more easygoing. But yeah, again, so film project was 2 months long, so we had 2 months to shoot. I'd say 1 hour 30 minutes, a 90-minute film, 90 minutes of runtime. And similarly, I did a web series which had 9 episodes and a runtime of I think 6 hours, and that was also shot in 2 months.
Yeah,
you
that's the craziness, because it's about like 3 films being shot in 2 months. And it's
exactly
insane the amount of work which comes onto production design in a series. I
it
mean,
is ridiculous.
like cinematography also, I mean, everyone, but production design, I think it just becomes too much. You're correct. There are 3 teams in forward. There are minimum 70 to 75 locations, counting each and everything, the small, tiny one, the big one, tiny one, insane amount of characters. And then 2 months to shoot an entire series of like, like you said, 6 hours. That's what, like almost 3.5 films. 3 films.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane amount of work. And
So
Avni, have you worked in a series as
Sorry?
you have worked in a series as well?
Yeah.
So what has your experience been, relation to the series and but you have worked in a series as an assistant, or you have done a
Yes.
series as a PD?
No, as an assistant.
Yeah. So what has been your takeaway from, series and films, like your comparison of these two formats?
I found that in films there was more discipline in terms of the schedule.
Mm,
Like if, it's like they had you knew that the film would be for 2 months or 3 months, even if it spilled over for maybe 2 extra weeks. With web series, it felt like maybe because what you have to picture is, like through so many episodes, that
mm,
there were a lot of reshoots, there were a lot of change of plans that, oh, actually, we've decided, because the series that I worked on, we built the entire set.
mm.
So now the team just had to come, the crew just had to come and film in whichever area they wanted, and we would just have to dress up that area. But then we had limited furniture, limited
Yeah.
props,
Mm,
and also they wanted a new kind of setup every time. So, like you said, because there are all these things at disposal, last minute prop shops, printers, and everything, we would get a lot of last minute requirements, or them
mm.
just changing their minds about how they want to do a
Yeah.
certain scene because suddenly maybe they realize how it fits in the entire series versus just that episode. So yeah, I've definitely found web series to be much more hectic, and I mean, like in terms of the production design itself, I think I find the end product rewarding because I feel like you see more of the sets in a web series that compared to films, your set could go away in one scene. But in a web series, you get to revisit the same set over different time periods. So even in set dressing and
Mm.
adding details, there's a lot that you can play with. Um, that's creatively, if you can, you get the time to do that.
Yeah.
But right now, I
The
think
thing
the
is that
way,
the time is the problem. I mean, you could do a lot
yeah,
with the series
yeah,
because, it is a very extensive format, and you can really
mm,
put a lot, but you don't really get the time because
yeah,
it's just 2 months of shoot, 60 days, 64 days of shoot for like, 6 hours, 7 hours. And then it's like, because in the prep period, you think so much like, oh, you would want to do this, you would want to do that.
yeah,
And then you prep
yeah,
for that. But when the time actually comes to do it, you just have like,
yeah,
okay, so I can't because, after this I have to run there and now they have changed that and I
yeah,
just have 2 days, who has said 4 days. But constant, I really wish people understand these constraints, or at least get 2 PDs to work together so that you can
yeah,
handle, one chunk of it, the other person can handle the other chunk of it, and, it
mm,
can be just a better experience for the production design department.
yeah.
Yeah. And you, Reliza, have you worked on a series?
A web series that I did in Nepal as a production designer. Uh, just like you guys described, it was more like you always had to be in standby. Like I just had one assistant, and then it was 6 episode series that was a year back, and it was like we were shooting in a school, and then in one classroom we shoot, and then we go to the basketball court, and then we go to library, and then it's a lot of controlled situation, and the kids are there, and then you have to change the dress, you have to change the set, and the administration is like not letting you do that. There's no production manager to take care of it. You have to convince the administration, like, can we please do that? That's not our job, but we
Oh,
still have to
yeah.
do it. Yeah. And so it was crazy, and we used to, and then we had to shift to another apartment from one part of the city, and then from there another apartment, and we had to finish like 6 episodes in 3 days.
Process, like when you start a project as a production designer, what is your process, your creative process? Like, what do you work on first? I mean, some designers I spoke to, they are kind of like, they take some words out of the script and then they kind of visualize the entire production design through those words, the mood, the color. What is your process? How do you start with drawing? Do you start with, how do you do it?
I think for me, the when and where are the most important things when I read a script. So the time period and the place where it's set. So, and then I like to read a lot about that time period and that place, because for me, production design is very much if I was a designer in that time period and that time place, you know. And then I get into who the characters are, what the story and the psychology is. But I think primarily I look at the time and the place and start from there.
And how do you kind of like, what is your process after the when and where? In the sense, do you start drawing? Do you look at like photography? Do you look for visual inspiration? Like, in the sense, what exactly do you refer? You know, like when I start a project, I always buy a book, something which is related to the narrative, like something, and it could be, it could inspire me, and it normally does inspire me, but something like that. So what is your process in the sense, like, how do you go, and do you do mood boards, color boards? Do you draw? Do you use Procreate? What are the tools you use also to get your creatives in place?
Yeah, I definitely find making mood boards really helpful in the way that I look at a lot of painters who existed at the time, because I think as a painter myself, I quickly think of colors a lot. Like even when I'm reading the script, I think colors are one of the primary things that come to my mind quite instinctively. So I look at a lot of creatives of that time period and that time place, or just look at images that would give me a better sense of uh, the space that I am creating as it exists if it's in reality, so that I can understand how I can then step away from that, as a designer. So I definitely look at the creatives of the time, and also like look at the realistic images of the space that I'm expected to create. And then when I put together those images sort of next to each other, it like I end up with sort of this middle ground where this is the reality, this is the imagined reality, or the kind of things that resonate with me when I read the script in terms of paintings and, like you said, photography, and how do I meet that middle ground,
Okay. And you, Reliza, what is your process once you get the script? And from the script to the space, how do you kind of like transform the script spatially?
For me, it's more about after once I finish reading the script, I spend a lot of time with my director, because in every scene I ask him like, what is the conclusion of this scene, like what do you intend to show out of this scene. So for every scene I take his intention from his point of view, and then after that what I do is I just sort out the locations, how many locations we have. So I try to visualize every location as per my director's vision and my vision. I try to imagine that location, and then I go for location recce with the production manager and the DP. And after that, once the locations are finalized, I create my color palette. Like, because in Nepal there's no film city, and it's a lot of controlled situation, and you can't pay. Sometimes you're not even allowed to paint other people's houses and stuff like that. So that is why for me location is the most important thing, the base for a color palette and tonality of the movie. And then only I can shift with hues and saturations and stuff like that. I also discuss with the colorist and DP regarding the tonalities and the color schemes. And then I move on to and then after once I finish my one round of sitting with the DP, director, I sit with the DP and the colorist, like what look are we going for and stuff like that. And then I sit with my team for props and dressing, and sometimes I also talk to the actors for character props like sometimes they would want to play with certain characters, certain props. If your character is very restless, would you want to have a fidget spinner or something like that? So I talked to my actors also, and I think, and yeah, I think it doesn't stop until the DP puts on the lens and the frame, and then you see, and then, oh, can I add one thing there? Can I add one line? So for me, it starts with location, the director's point of view for every scene, and then location, and then DP and the colorist, and then my team, and then yeah, it's just like that.
I mean, you don't really have discussion with the DP and the director together, like you, DP, and the director, when the location recce starts, or even before that, when you have to start selecting the locations. There is no kind of like a meeting with the DP and the director, or is it a separate thing? Like you have one with director, then so when the director and the DP discuss their shot breakdowns and their lenses and like how they visualize the thing, are you a part of it, or how is it, or it's just individually you sit with everybody?
No. Initially, I sit with them individually, and later when you're about to storyboard and short design and stuff like that, so it's the DP, the director, me, and the storyboardist and the chief AD. Like there's like 5-6 of us, and we sit together and we discuss things like that. But one thing I just want to share with you guys. So since I had always been doing urban stories, this movie that I'm currently working on is based in a very rural community, and it was really hard for me because I didn't know about that ethnicity, the rural houses and stuff like that. And from this movie, I learned that we need to do a lot of research about that culture, the history, and the civilization of that ethnicity, that caste, and all that. So yeah, it was really hard for me because I've always been following the urban pattern, and this is the first time I worked in a rural story. So
it's a rural story set in contemporary time, or it's a rural story set in the period, like
it's like 2 years back. So contemporary. So I was so unaware about all of these things, and I would not even understand 80% of the words that my director would say, like, Reliza, I want this, and I would just nod my head, and I had to Google everything. So I spent around 1 week to do the research because I had to learn a lot of terms, like rural terms. And even the script was in Nepali, and it was really hard for me. So I think one thing I would like to suggest all the production designers and art directors is that we should also do research on the history and culture of the protagonist and antagonist character, or the movie that is or on the culture that the movie is based on. So I think that one thing I learned, and I think I even messaged you asking like, do we do plumbing and
plumbing? And I was like, no, I don't do plumbing on my projects, at least not yet. Now that I'm a PD, I have to start plumbing also. We're putting electricity, plumbing, why not? Cleaning West.
To be honest, I was so frustrated. Like, I was so disappointed in that project. Like, they were all 3 men, and I was the only female. And then I would be like talking in my intercom, and then I would be like, "Can you please do that? Can you please clamp that? Can you do that? Can you do that?" And then I felt like, I'm just sitting in front of the monitor and just doing nothing, and all the men are doing this and that, and then I kind of felt so bad, and then I texted you like, "Do you do plumbing and all that? Because I don't know how to do it."
Well, I hope the time never comes when the production designers have to start doing plumbing also. It's anyways, we do so much that plumbing will be a bit too much, Also, like, come on. But then what motivated you to take on this project, since it was a Nepali script, a rural thing? What motivated you to take this particular script?
Actually, it's a very good banner. The movie is from a very good banner, and the director actually has won a lot of awards. And I told my director, "See, sir, I don't understand the 80% of the words you're talking, but please give me some time for research, and then I will do whatever it needs to be done." So after 20 days, I have to shoot the second half, which is like the story of after 2 years. Now we have to redo the whole production design again. So yeah, that's there. So I think a challenge was a big part that encouraged me to do this.
That's fantastic. But yeah, the main takeaway is that production designers should research. Definitely. Even if it's a contemporary story, even if it's like 10
Yeah.
years, 2 years, 1 year, 1 month, please
Yeah.
research the genre,
Yeah.
please research your spaces because that's so important. So it's a great takeaway. So yeah, and Rahil, you in general,
Yes.
like in as a graphic designer, you mostly kind of work in packaging and you work in branding and logo. But what we did in Shameless was also a little bit different, where we kind of used your typography skills and paper and use that for texturing a lot of spaces. So say something about that entire, like, the collaboration and the experience of that entire thing, which was a little normally with my graphic designer, I've always kind of done this whole typography on this particular GSM paper and kind of merging it and then texturing it, then merging it, then texturing it. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of talking about this because I also want to point out that what other ways graphic design is used in production design apart from your branding, logo, your props, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, I think like you touched a very important topic over there. I think typography, type design in general plays a very important role. Mainly because I think it helps establish cultural context
Yes.
and in so the project that we were working on together, we were trying to cheat again Nepal as India, right? And so we had to create these pieces. We had to create these prints on the wall. Everywhere you go, you see this on the wall. You see uh, posters and advertisements and all of those kind of details that aren't like brand new. Of course, they've been put there and then they've been ripped apart and they've been aged and they've been made to look that way. But the little nitty gritties that goes into making sure that what kind of a font am I selecting, what kind of a scale is it going to be visible at, what does it look like in real life when I would actually go down to such a street. So as much as it is important for a production designer to do their research well, I think it is necessary for graphic designers to be well read, well aware about the aesthetics of various times. And also I personally, because I am madly in love with like type design and typography, I think it's very necessary to kind of look into the details of that and understand and make sound choices about why you're using a particular style or why you're using a particular color, why you're using a particular aesthetic, and does it make sense with the time, with the place, and does it make sense to be put in the frame in the first place. If it shouldn't look out of place. Like I think Avni said this earlier, a good production designer's job is done well if it's not that noticeable. I mean, the
Yeah,
audience
that's
kind of
very invisible.
absorb. Yeah, they completely believe it, right? So we're not trying to make something out of the blue. We're trying to make something that's very natural, that's very believable, and that really puts the viewer into that space. And it's not possible if I'm not constantly observing my environment, regardless of where I am, whether I'm working or I'm not working. Reading up and all of that is necessary. Like research, formal research is necessary, but generally, I think we need to be more observant as individuals to kind of these cues and details in daily life, which somewhere down the line do help us in the work that we do because we are building these worlds. And yeah, type design specifically, that particular project that we did, where we so there was this huge wall and a lot of these interiors where we had these um male problem posters, sex problem posters, and it was a wall full of it. And then we had to like rip it down. And the minute I saw how it was executed, it really did make it much more believable and it put me in that space. And I feel, uh, even though I mean, I could have looked at it as it's going to be ripped across. It doesn't matter how detailed or how much focused I am on this particular output. It's going to be torn. It's going to be tossed around. It can kind of, I can maybe push subpar work over here. But I think the nuances and the details is then what makes it, right? The devil is in the details.
Yeah, it
So
also took us a while to come to the format we wanted to use. You did so much of research and so much of like options, and at the end of the day it took us a while to reach, okay, this is the format we are going to use. And then like the choice of paper, the choice of color, and it was a part of the whole texture painting part of production design, and not just graphics basically. And
Yeah.
that is the power of graphic design also, how you can silently put it in your, on a wall. Sometimes you have like a tone thing, but when you paint over it and then you texture it again, so you see a little bit of like the type coming, and then you see the color and the wall on it.
Hmm.
It might not be something which is very obvious, but it adds a lot to the space, in the sense like it just adds these little techniques to be used, these little details, which you kind of get inspired from your daily, when you're walking, you see these things and you're like, oh, maybe I can use this in my set. On the streets when you go, you have like in India, especially in South Asia, especially everywhere you have like posters, various kind of posters, advertisements, your film posters, but the way they're all textured naturally is such an inspiration in itself. You're kind of like, this is something which I can use in my design. So yes, I think production designers and production should always observe where they are, and I think details come a lot from just these observations. So that's how you create your hyper real world while taking these details from the reality. What do you think, Avni, about this? How is
Yeah.
how do you take details from life and then put them in your work? Like, how does it happen for you?
I mean, being a production designer has really put my brain on overdrive on a daily basis because wherever I go, I will like look at things and my brain will just go, oh, potential research, take a photo. You might need to create
Yeah.
this random thing somewhere. And I remember when I was aging for Gamaghar, I literally just saw mold everywhere around me that like for a whole month, I would like look at, oh, this is what patches of mold could look like. Oh, I could do more blacks there, more green there. And so sometimes when the project that you're working on, the thing that you're obsessed with, so you see everything through that lens and then you
Mm,
start noticing those details.
mm.
And You're right, like that is what creates the hyperrealism. And sometimes there are like really quirky details in
Yeah.
reality that if you wanted to do in films, people would be like, oh, this is not how reality is. And they're like, no, no, I saw this. Like, this
Yeah.
is so cool. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
I think it makes reality more interesting being a production
Yeah.
designer, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're constantly finding for things, your details. Like you're correct. Like
yeah.
as a production designer, you never switch off. Anywhere in the
No,
world you are, you'll take a photo and you'll be like, maybe I'm going to use this way of painting there. Maybe I'm going to do this here. Maybe I'm going to do that.
yeah.
It never switches. You go to people's homes, you're always looking at, oh, maybe this decor is nice. Oh, I like the carpet here. Oh, this is nice. Oh, this can
Yeah,
be changed. It's just
yeah,
like a layer in your head which never goes. It's just like
yeah, yeah.
there in your head and you're
Filed
thinking,
in.
it's like a second, it's your sense, it's your sixth sense. Okay,
Yeah.
just taking details. What about you, Reliza? How do you kind of like how do you make details in your project?
Um, for me, I take inspirations and like from places like wherever I go, just like you guys talked about. If I go to if I find something interesting, I take pictures and I try to not copy it exactly, but try to give my own twist and taste on it. And sometimes I also try to get inspiration from some movies or music videos or something that I've watched. And also, yeah, I think that's it. And sometimes I just use my wildest imaginations and then I try to look it up in the internet, like, does this work? Like, am I on the right track? And then I try to look it up on the internet, and then if I find that okay, there's something similar to it, then I go for it. If it is way out of the place, then I just reject that idea, the whole idea. So yeah, for me, it's sometimes I also feel like if someone gives me a reference, I feel like I lack my originality.
But Avni, you also work as a concept artist, am I correct? Like you have also done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us something about this, because I think this is a very new thing as well, concept art. So what do you do? What tools you use, and what exactly does it mean, concept art?
So I do it for films and films and theater both. And for films, it's been mostly for fantasy genre things where it's been a lot about world building. So that's what I was doing for 2 lockdowns, which was fantastic. Somebody was just like, you have to create 6 worlds and research and draw. And I was just in my room imagining these worlds. So a lot of that just involved sketching to get like certain spaces down, defining visual languages for the spaces that I'm creating. So, like the concept art itself comes down to doing things on Photoshop and Procreate is how I work. And it feels a lot like painting to me because it feels like I'm creating this image where I can define the texture, I can define the light, the colors. Like I'm not dependent on the whole crew to create that image. I can do that myself. Like decide the angle through which I am telling the story about the space. So when it comes to films, it's a lot more about this is what the end product will be. But for theater design, it's been so interesting because the designer that I was working for is based in London and he does a lot of stuff in Finland and Oslo. And theater design is completely opposite of films in the way that you don't start with the end product. You start with like a feeling. Like we were designing Don Giovanni, and he was like, I'm imagining gardens and green marble and rusted mirror. Let's do something with that. And I was like, okay. So then I was just putting together images and sort of like working more on the imagery, like, oh, what is the how do I want my audience to feel? Because I feel like theater is so magical where everybody decides that, yeah, that's water. We all decide that's water. So everyone's willing to imagine with you. So I think working with him, I feel like it helps me understand design in a different way. So yeah, it's a lot about just visualizing what everybody else it wants out of a space. So it's also been a lot about trying to understand if I'm doing a concept art for someone, what it is they want. So that there's also trial and errors where I do something, I send it to them. A lot of the times I just do what I like. And then if my wavelength matches with the designer, which is what I think a good collaboration ends up doing, then they also like that. Or if they think that, no, you can change this, you can change that. So it grows into something, I think. So it's been very interesting to sort of execute what someone is imagining and putting that on screen. So yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I have to wrap this session, but the one thing I'm going to ask you is, would you recommend this department and why?
It's not for the lighthearted, that's for sure.
The famous words, the famous last words. Not for the
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
true. It's true.
But it's one of the coolest jobs, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah.
I think it's definitely one of the coolest jobs, but yeah, it's not about the lighthearted. I think it's I think you need to have a lot of patience, as well as you also need to be so on standby. Like sometimes you just you need to have a lot of jugaad. Like
jugaad is the right word.
Yes.
Jugaad is the right word. I think anybody who comes to India to work learns this.
Yeah.
The word jugaad. Everybody goes back with the word jugaad, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Great word. I'd forgotten about it, but good to remind. And you, Rahil, would you recommend graphic designers to try this out, and why?
I would totally recommend it because I think this is one space where you can really hone your skills. You're churning out so much stuff on a regular basis on a very short timeline, and you're also looking after execution. You're looking after quality. You're looking after storytelling. You're working with a team. So it's a wholesome experience, and you're really expected to put yourself out there. So if you kind of bring out the best in you, maybe this is the space for you. But yeah, I think personally also I've kind of like refined a lot of my hard skills, like software skills. I know how to like do things much quicker now, or maybe I know how to cheat things now, just because of the nature of the work that I've been doing in these projects. So yeah, I think I don't know if this is all a graphic designer would want, but it's an experience worth having for sure.
Yes, and we leave with the last question. What are your projects coming? Which projects should we look out for right now? Which are streaming? What is coming for all three of you? So who wants to go? What are your upcoming projects? And where can one see it?
I'll go first. I've recently made a painting for a project that my friend did in Ladakh, and I'm also featuring in it while painting.
Oh, nice.
So that's coming in DIF,
Oh,
Dharamshala Festival. And another film that I hope he finishes editing is somewhere down the line next year. So a film and a web series next year.
very
Yeah.
nice. Look forward. And you, Reliza, what is next? What is upcoming for you? Which one can see or stream?
Probably in April, March or April, you'll see the feature that I'm currently working on. So the release date is set on the 1st of Baishak. That's like the Nepali New Year. So on that day, you'll see the feature, and then, but before that, maybe I will do some commercials for Coke and Royal Enfield and stuff like that. So
Okay.
maybe
And you?
if you guys are into commercials.
And you, Rahil?
Well, there's this feature film. It's called The Shameless. Look out for that. I mean, that's one exciting project I had. And there's another web series that I just did, which is called The Hidden Files. Might be available on Amazon pretty soon. So, yeah, cybercrime based, fun little watch. So these two projects for sure.
So fantastic. It was lovely chatting with all of you, and I wish you all the very best, and especially to you, Reliza. Power. All right. Good luck to everyone, and lovely speaking to all of you. And please follow other design events which are happening in the International Production Design Week. There's a lot of things happening. There are masterclasses, panels, directors coming and talking. There is also an event specifically for graphic design. You just have to go through the PD website and see which one. I think there is one in panel or masterclass. I think masterclass. So yeah, I mean, it's really an immersive week where you can understand production design from all over the world. So please, you get to know we still don't do plumbing. So all right. On that note, I see you soon, and thank you and bye.
Thank you.